Isaac Netero, the world's greatest human Nen user, has a grandchild. Many grandchildren, actually, all of which have been smuggled into positions of prominence within the Karkian Empire to play key roles within the succession contest. And with that in mind, it is my belief that Bobby Minor is one of those grandchildren. Bobby Minor is a graduate of the Karkian Royal Military Academy who was subsequently recruited into First Prince Benjamin's private army. Bobby Minor appears to be significantly younger than most of the guards in Benjamin's service, which we can tell less because of aesthetics, but also that. However, it's more to do with how those around Bobby Minor treat him. On 2 occasions, he's been playfully tapped on the shoulder, once by Slacker and once by Furikov. And within a strict hierarchy like the Karkian Empire, one would not dare perform such an action unless they were much older than Bobby Minor, who despises the shoulder tap and went so far as to physically brush his shoulder off afterwards on both occasions. He's usually treated like the kid in the room when he's dealing with representatives of the first or second prince or the second queen or the first queen, those ones. And I take the time to linger on Bobby Minor's youth because it's going to be extremely relevant to his ultimate purpose in the story. But for now, his youth also means that his abilities must be absolutely extraordinary to earn himself a spot in the First Prince's private army. These soldiers are the elite of the elite, and the 15 of them together would be capable of commandeering small nations overnight. Not simply due to their tactical expertise, but more so due to their Nen mastery, which rivals, if not outright surpasses, most Hunter Association members. Yoshihiro Togashi has been quite inconsistent, to say the least, with how the Hunter Association is portrayed, as it includes some of the most brilliant Nen users to have ever walked this earth, like Jing and Pariston. However, the Hunter Association in fictional reality is mostly filled with people like Gorenu, who are smart and powerful, but not at a competitive life or death level. However, these guards, including Bobby Minor, very including him, are on that level, which I take the time to linger on because it's easy to look at the glut of characters that Togashi has shoved into our submissive and breedable brain space and just sort of disregard them. But Benjamin's group of 15 men are to be treated like a less flamboyant version of the Phantom Troop, all of which first appear in chapter 363. After the departure of the Black Whale 1 and the sudden appearance of each prince's guardian spirit beast, First Prince Benjamin used this quote unknown threat as the basis of assigning a series of his own personal guards to the room of each prince, with some exceptions like 4th Prince Aradnik, who had the right to refuse Benjamin's authority because they are both sons of First Queen Unma. And just in case you, for whatever reason, have any doubt, Benjamin's goal here was not to protect his siblings. Nah. This was all just an excuse to plant his soldiers in their rooms so that they could be quietly assassinated and or permanently detained. And Benjamin ended his command to his soldiers with, "You are authorized to use lethal force to eliminate the enemy in the name of self-defense." And what that actually means is make sure you have a good excuse ready before you mercilessly slaughter your targets, as aptly demonstrated by Vincent, who was assigned to 14th Prince Woble's room and who claims that the maid Sandra ran at him with a knife, so he had to exercise his right to self-defense. Although apparently Vincent also has the right to self-offense, as he committed word I can't say on YouTube after having his aura drained by Karapika to avoid being interrogated, and we are here. This is where Bobby Minor comes in. After Vincent killed Sandra and after Vincent killed Vincent, the world's quietest declaration of war was sounded between 1st Prince Benjamin and 14th Prince Wobble. Just as a reminder, Wobble is a baby, but blood had been drawn on both sides by the same man, but on both sides. And so Bobby Minor was then selected to go to the front in place of Vincent. And Bobby Minor's exact orders were as follows. Bobby Minor, you are Vincent's successor. There have been changes to the mission. What you are being given is a mission of the utmost importance, for which failure is not an option. Give it your life. And that is what I want us all to remember going forward. At all times, Bobby Minor's primary mission is to kill Karapika, Bill, Queen Oito, and of course, 14th Prince Wobble. In the words of the maid Shimano describing Benjamin's wrath, he will never change his mind through negotiation, even if we plead for our lives. Negotiations are broken down over the death of his subordinate. They only have one matter of concern. In order to show respect for enemies who remain loyal to their client, they will let them choose how to die. So at best, we get to choose how we get killed. Something to ponder as, what's this? Ding dong, Bobby Miner's at the door now, and we don't have the authority to refuse his entry because he's a representative of the first prince and we are the lowly 14th. And this is so much worse than you may initially think. Because one question not a lot of people tend to ask is, why did Benjamin choose to send Bobby Miner? It's because of how quickly and efficiently that Vincent was dealt with. As a result of that, Benjamin has very accurately identified Kurapika as a major or perhaps even the major threat to him in the succession contest. And Bobby Miner isn't just some disposable dude. He was one of the guards kept in reserve for precisely situations like this. Balsamilko Might has stated that Bobby Miner has a counteractive type Nen ability, which means that it only activates in response to a particular condition being met by an opponent, like say Phaeton's Rising Sun, where he transmutes his aura into scorching heat, the power of which is determined by the amount of physical damage inflicted on Phaeton by the opponent. So Bobby Miner is here to act as a trap. His job is to analyze the abilities of everyone in this room and to maneuver them into meeting the conditions of his ability. However, Bobby Miner also has a particular specialty amongst Benjamin's forces. Bobby Miner, very curiously, is a master of N, which is the advanced combination of Ten and Ren that allows an N user to project their aura to create something of an aura radar, where the user can feel the shape and movement of anything within range. N is very difficult to use and it is extremely draining for almost all Nen users. The vast majority of them cannot keep it up for more than a minute at a time, which is why what people tend to do is blink it on and off when they want to quickly check something, but they can't sustain it because it drains far too much aura. However, Bobby Miner is able to maintain a quite sizable N for unknown quantities of time, which covers the entirety of 4th Prince Werwolf's quarters, which is a massive space. And so during his early appearances in the succession contest, Bobby Miner is quite a relentless presence monitoring Kurapika's group, which points to either Bobby Miner having shockingly large aura reserves enough to be able to dedicate to this endeavor, that would be bad, or he has a sheer level of mastery to use aura more efficiently than 99.9% of all Nen users. That's bad as well. Either way, it's not good, it's bad. But as flagged before, what makes Bobby Miner most dangerous is his intelligence. Furikov, one of Benjamin's best Nen analysts, even showed a great deal of respect for Bobby Miner's analytical capabilities as well, which says a lot because Furikov doesn't particularly respect Bobby Miner in any other area, and we'll get into that dynamic in a bit. But to demonstrate, after one day of being in 14th Prince Werwolf's quarters, Bobby Miner had figured out that Kurapika was either a conjurer or a manipulator, and that he had multiple hidden Nen abilities aside from the line detecting dowsing chain, which Benjamin's guards currently refer to as the quote forcing confession ability. And after Kurapika chose to reveal that he was a specialist in his Nen class, Bobby Miner was able to identify that Kurapika almost certainly has a unique Nen ability dedicated to each of his chained fingers. And I want to emphasize that Bobby Miner figured out all of this without seeing anything, or anything except for the specialist water divination Kurapika did. But all Bobby Miner needed was confirmation of Kurapika's affinity, and he now has a horrifyingly accurate hypothesis of Kurapika's abilities. Bobby Miner also figured out that this group possessed an ability that allows them to use captured animals as reconnaissance via an event I refer to as the cockroach deception, where Bill pretended to manipulate and control a cockroach, but it was actually Queen Oito using Saeed's ability through Kurapika's stealth dolphin. There's a lot of layers there. Obviously, Bobby Miner, he didn't know all of that. What happened with this cockroach deception was bizarrely complicated even for Hunter x Hunter. But even then, Bobby Miner knew enough to identify one of the hidden abilities that was being used in this deception. And he was also smart enough to know that what he was seeing was not Bill's Nen ability, as he reported Bill's capabilities as unknown to Furikov. His intelligence, it is relentless, and Bobby Miner had a tendency to question Kurapika at the most inconvenient moments. Sometimes it's as if Bobby Miner can read Kurapika's mind, and he knows when Kurapika is attempting to deceive him or put him in an unfavorable position. And thus far, Kurapika has managed to maintain a mental advantage, but only barely. However, that may not be a concern for too much longer, because Bobby Miner's crowning feature as a character is actually his surprising degree of empathy. When 8th Queen Oito was distraught over seeing Momose murdered with Saeed's Nen ability, Bobby Miner offered to call and check Momose's room because nobody else present had the authority authority to contact a higher-ranking prince. Bobby Miner had no reason to do this. And this is where I think Kurapika began to understand that Bobby Miner has a heart. There's even this close-up of Kurapika surprised that one of Benjamin's guards would offer to use their power for the emotional well-being of such a low-ranking queen. And after 12th Prince Momoze's death was confirmed, Bobby Miner did something even more unusual, and he asked Queen Oito, "Your Majesty, there were no benefits to you by crying out. Why did you do it?" So what Bobby Miner is asking here is why Oito tried to prevent Momoze's murder. Because Momoze's death directly benefits Oito and her daughter Wobble, because it increases their chances of winning the contest. And Oito answers that, "For you people caught up in the survival game, it must seem so odd that I didn't simply allow my stepdaughter to be killed. I understand. I have nothing more to say to you." And it's after this point that Bobby Miner takes an action that completely changes his character going forward, which is that not only does he physically remove himself from Oito's presence after vehemently insisting that he needs to keep track of her at all times, but Bobby Miner also releases his N and stops monitoring for Nen use in Oito's quarters. This is a very big deal, because at this point Bobby Miner, he knows that something weird is happening, and he almost certainly suspects that Queen Oito can now use Nen. So releasing his N and allowing her freedom is very risky, because this allows Oito to continue her Nen training without having to worry about Bobby Miner's ever-present aura. Bill even went so far as to label this as, quote, considerate, although Bill, as he should be, was still rather suspicious of Bobby Miner's motivations, remembering that his mission here is to enact Benjamin's vengeance upon these people. He's either here to directly kill or assist in killing them. But from this moment on, Bobby Miner actively displays genuine empathy and concern for Oito. In particular, there's this lovely panel in chapter 369 where he's checking on her after Oito screams seeing Saraidnik's guardian spirit beast, and Bobby Miner is drawn with these distinctly soft eyes. And what this indicates to me is that Bobby Miner himself has a rather tragic backstory that we have yet to explore, as his heart was defrosted once Oito mentioned not being able to just stand by and allow her family to be murdered, even if it was to her benefit. Something about that struck Bobby Miner right in the feels. To Oito, human lives aren't just pawns and obstacles to be used and overcome, which is clearly a principle that Bobby Miner also shares. However, that is very much unlike the rest of Benjamin's soldiers. And from here, Bobby Miner significantly softens, such as when Sakata requested that he be informed about the Nen influence affecting 13th Prince Mariam's room. Bobby Miner simply smiled and gave Kurapika the okay to tell him. I can guarantee you that no other soldier of Benjamin would have done this. They would have prioritized controlling and monopolizing any and all information, especially regarding Nen, as much as possible. At the time, Kurapika even noted, Bobby Miner has stopped interfering. Is it a strategy, or is he waiting until the assassin is found? The assassin they're referring to Silent Majority, but the answer to this is probably neither, because there is something in our most recent batch of chapters that I think explains Bobby Miner's abrupt change in behavior. In chapter 401, whilst Longi is with Kurapika in Oito's room, there's a close-up of Bobby Miner waiting with a brand of curiosity that he had not expressed for any other student undertaking the Nen classes. There's also an inner monologue with Furikov thinking that Longi is the Silent Majority assassin, and he is expecting Kurapika to take action, but Bobby Miner, who should theoretically have come to the same conclusion, has a much more calm expression, as if he knows that Longi is not the user of Silent Majority, which she isn't. And after Longi emerges from the room with visual evidence that she'd been crying, we have this incredibly curious panel of Bobby Miner with no face and Furikov asking him if something is wrong. So this is far from confirmed, but these reactions are what lead me to believe that Bobby Miner is also a child of Beyond Netero. Chapter 401 was of course when Longi revealed that not only was she Beyond's daughter, but that Beyond has an unknown quantity of children, each of whom have had a Nen curse placed on them since birth. These curses do come with some positive aspects. It means that all of Beyond's children were initiated at birth, and so they've all been able to use Nen technically since birth, as apparently if you initiate a baby, they swiftly and subconsciously develop Ten and Zetsu in order to keep themselves alive. So it's a very handy cheat to learning Nen. But again, all of these children were cursed, and it is hypothesized that the curses will activate when Beyond's children are killed, very similar to Second Prince Camilla's legion of curse users. And Beyond has planted his children close to each prince, with my belief that Bobby Minor is the curse plant in First Prince Benjamin's army. He's the odd one out in terms of age and loyalty, and it makes sense that he was chosen for this position due to his exceptional talent, which was given to him from birth via his Nen initiation by Beyond. Bobby Minor would have been far and away the best Nen user of any of his peers. But this also may explain why Bobby Minor is so sympathetic to Oito's concern for her family, because neither of Bobby Minor's families have that same concern. If he is one of Beyond's children, then Bobby Minor was born to die. And even if he isn't, it is still his purpose to die as one of Benjamin's soldiers. Benjamin didn't just say stake your life as hyperbole. His intention is for his soldiers to die. And after they pass on, their Nen abilities are then absorbed by Benjamin via the Benjamin Baton Hatsu. Something to just clarify in case anyone's wondering, this is not the ability of Benjamin's guardian spirit beast. Benjamin was a Nen user prior to the commencement of the succession contest, and he intentionally crafted his personal ability expecting his soldiers to die. And this is a twisted form of family, which can be seen in chapter 373 when Second Prince Camilla threatens Furykov's family with, quote, unimaginable suffering, and Furykov simply responds with, family, huh? Don't have any. Prince Benjamin is my family. But that's not necessarily true for Bobby Minor. He might not have any recorded family, but his reactions to Longi imply to me that this could be a situation where Bobby Minor knows that Longi is his half-sister, and that he has genuine concern for her, his family. And that what may end up happening is that Bobby Minor's great act in the succession contest is going to be to choose which family he aligns with. Does he join forces with his literal family who is now allied with Kurapika? Or does Bobby Minor see through his duty and die for the military family that is Prince Benjamin? Or is his destiny to die for the sake of Beyond? We do have Chekhov's Nen curse in play, so we've got to expect that at least one of Beyond's children is going to be successfully sacrificed. But with everything we've been shown about Bobby Minor, I have to think that he'll be joining us. He is far too empathetic to everyone, I guess except Benjamin and his soldiers, and so I think he is primed to flip to our side, with his greatest obstacle being Furykov, another of Benjamin's soldiers who was sent to attend Kurapika's Nen classes. He is a much more typically bloodthirsty soldier, and despite both of them being employed by Benjamin, Furykov and Bobby Minor are far from friendly allies. They actually have a rather antagonistic relationship with one another. Furykov is constantly second-guessing Bobby Minor's judgment, and you know what? For good reason from Furykov's perspective, because Bobby Minor is acting a little bit odd, and not necessarily in the best interests of Benjamin, who Furykov calls his family. Furykov has also indirectly threatened Bobby Minor by reminding him that failure is not an option and that Benjamin's command was to, quote, stake your life. And what we could be building towards is an eventual showdown between Furykov and Bobby Minor. Bobby Minor's counteractive Nen ability requires an opponent to take an action against him first, and he may end up constructing a situation where that opponent is Furykov. Furykov, in theory, knows what Bobby Minor's ability is, however, he is fatally overconfident in himself. Furykov always believes that he's the smartest man in the room, and sure, he is very intelligent, but so is everyone else. And Furykov has already been outsmarted by the user of Silent Majority, who even mocked how oblivious Furykov was to their presence. And when Bobby Minor said that it still wasn't time to make their move, Furykov replied with a very condescending, "This is so enlightening. A lesson in strategic patience." I suspect what's going to happen is this working relationship will break down. We'll reach a point where Furykov is impatient and he will be ready to carry out their mission, but Bobby Minor is feeling too many feels to go through with it, leading to a conflict between the two of them. And as much as I would hope that Bobby Minor emerged victorious, this is Hunter x Hunter, and Furykov winning and perhaps even killing Bobby Minor may be more likely. As if everything we've speculated is true, then that may even trigger the activation of Beyond's curse, should Bobby Minor be one of his children. And I get that this is a lot of speculation, lots of if this then that and perhaps the, but one thing I know for a fact is that Bobby Minor is being built up for a role of exceptional importance. No one except Togashi knows exactly what that is, but I would strongly encourage you to keep an eye on this man.